Arcturians. I need to start with a direct question. Do you really believe that a heart attack starts suddenly? That a person wakes up fine, and a few hours later, the heart simply fails? In Brazil, cardiovascular diseases remain among the leading causes of death. Hundreds of thousands of lives are lost every year. And the most terrifying part? Most of these cases could have been avoided. But here is what almost no one is telling you. Heart diseases do not start in the heart. They start much earlier. They start in the frequency. They start in ignored stress, in silent inflammation, in an unregulated diet, in the disconnection from your biofield. Today, I'm going to show you, based on science but also with stellar intelligence, how your body functions as a multidimensional interface, and how small daily choices are modulating your heart frequency long before any diagnosis. If you care about your health, if you want to live longer, if you want to protect your family, leave your like right now. Share this video with someone you love, and write in the comments, "I protect my heart." Because today you are not just going to watch a video, you are going to receive an alert. 1. The alert. No one perceives. Arcturians, the problem isn't the heart attack. The problem is what happens 10, 15, 20 years before it. Cardiovascular disease is a slow process. It begins with small invisible changes. Microinflammations in the arteries, progressive increase in blood pressure, hormonal deregulation, oxidative stress. None of this hurts. None of this screams. But all of it alters your internal frequency. When you live under constant stress, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline chronically. These hormones are useful in emergencies, but destructive when they become permanent. What happens? Blood pressure rises, blood vessels lose elasticity, inflammation increases. The heart works harder than it should. Now I want you to realize something important. This is not just biochemistry. This is frequency modulation. The heart doesn't just respond to blood. It responds to your emotional state, your mental pattern, the quality of your sleep, your diet. Studies show that emotional states like anger and anxiety alter the heart rhythm immediately. This is not empty spiritualization. This is physiology. But here is the point almost no one connects. When you live misaligned from your own internal coherence, your cardiovascular system pays the price. And most Arcturians only notice when the body is already on red alert. Now tell me, have you ever felt tiredness even after sleeping? Palpitations in moments of stress? Fluctuating blood pressure? Constant irritation? These are early signs that the frequency is already being impacted. And ignoring this is like ignoring a crack in the wall, thinking the structure will never give way. In the next chapter, I will show you something that completely changes the way you see the heart. Because it is not just a pump, it is much more than that. The heart is not a pump, it is an electromagnetic field. For decades, we were taught that the heart is just a pump that pushes blood through the body. Technically, yes, it pumps about 7,000 liters of blood per day, but that is only the most superficial layer of the story. The heart is the organ with the strongest electric field in the human body. Its electrical signal can be measured meters away with sensitive equipment. It generates an electromagnetic field more powerful than that of the brain. This is science. Now breathe and realize the depth of this. You are not just a set of organs functioning mechanically. You are an organized bioelectric field. Your heart sends constant signals to the brain through the vagus nerve. It influences mental clarity, decision-making, emotional regulation, blood pressure, immune system. When the heart rhythm is coherent, that is, when there is healthy heart rate variability, the body enters balance. When it is chaotic, the entire system suffers. This is where galactic consciousness meets physiology. If the heart is a field generator, then it is also a frequency modulator. Emotional states like gratitude and calm increase cardiac coherence. Anger and fear create disorganized patterns. Now think, how many hours a day do you live in a state of alert? The problem is not feeling stress. The problem is living in it. Arcturians, the body functions as a multidimensional interface. What you think and feel doesn't stay in the mind. It alters neurotransmitters, hormones, heartbeats, pressure, inflammation. And if your field has been disorganized for years, the cardiovascular system starts paying interest. This is not mystical. It is neurocardiology. And here is a curious detail that few comment on. The heart begins to beat in the embryo even before the brain is fully formed. It is a primary regulatory center. When you live in emotional disconnection, you are literally altering the electrical mathematics of your own system. That's why heart diseases don't start in the heart muscle. They start in the pattern. In the next chapter, we will talk about the silent signs that appear long before any diagnosis. And I want you to pay attention, because perhaps you are already receiving these signs. The silent signs that precede disease Arcturians. The body always warns before collapsing. The problem is that most people only respect the symptom when it hurts. Cardiovascular disease rarely begins with a sudden heart attack. Before that, the body sends small signs, discrete, cumulative, easily ignored. And here is the danger. They seem normal. Let's analyze the main ones. 1. Constant tiredness. You sleep 7-8 hours and wake up exhausted. This can indicate systemic inflammation or overload of the cardiovascular system. When vessels lose elasticity, the heart needs to work harder to pump blood. This consumes energy. Many Arcturians interpret this as low spiritual frequency. But often it is physiology asking for adjustment. 2. Palpitations in moments of stress. The heart racing easily is not just emotion. It can be an overactivated sympathetic nervous system. Elevated cortisol increases pressure, heart rate, and vascular stiffness. If this becomes the pattern, you enter permanent alert mode, and no one was made to live in a state of constant threat. 3. Fluctuating blood pressure. Pressure doesn't rise out of nowhere. It rises when vessels get stiffer, when there is excess sodium, when there is endothelial inflammation, when stress is chronic. Hypertension is called the silent killer because it doesn't hurt, but it wears down the heart slowly. 4. Fragmented sleep. Waking up several times at night, especially between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., can be related to cortisol spikes or metabolic deregulation. And here is something important. During deep sleep, the heart reduces its workload and the body performs vascular repairs. If you don't get enough deep sleep, the repair doesn't happen. It's like using a car every day and never taking it for maintenance. 5. Frequent irritation and anxiety. Chronic emotional states alter the cardiac electrical pattern. You might even think this is just personality, but often it is a dysregulated nervous system. The body does not distinguish emotional stress from physical threat. It reacts the same way. Now, I want you to be honest with yourself. How many of these signs have you been ignoring? The problem is not having a symptom. The problem is normalizing the imbalance. Arcturians with galactic consciousness also need to develop physiological consciousness, because the body is not a spiritual obstacle. It is the foundation of your mission. In the next chapter, we will talk about the biochemical root behind all of this, inflammation and cortisol. And here, the conversation gets serious. The truth about inflammation and cortisol. Arcturians. If there is a silent villain behind most heart diseases, its name is chronic inflammation. But before you think inflammation is always bad, let's clarify. Acute inflammation saves lives. It is the body's response to an injury or infection. The problem starts when inflammation never turns off. And here enters cortisol. Cortisol is an essential hormone. It regulates energy, blood pressure, stress response. In dangerous situations, it is necessary. But when you live under constant pressure, bills, conflicts, excess information, poorly slept nights, cortisol remains elevated, and this triggers a dangerous sequence: increased blood pressure, higher sodium retention, elevation of blood glucose, inflammation in the artery walls, formation of atherosclerotic plaques. Arteries begin to lose elasticity, blood flow becomes less efficient, the heart has to work harder. Now pay attention to this. Most plaques that cause heart attacks start to form decades before the acute event. Decades. It is not a sudden attack. It is a slow process. And here is the point that connects science with vibrational medicine. Chronic emotional stress keeps the sympathetic nervous system activated. This keeps cortisol high. This keeps inflammation active. This alters heart frequency. Your biofield is not separate from your biology. When you live in constant tension, the body interprets this as survival. It does not prioritize regeneration. It prioritizes defense. And constant defense ages the cardiovascular system. Important curiosity. Studies show that people with high stress levels have greater thickening of the carotid artery walls, an early marker of cardiovascular risk. This means that repeated emotion turns into physical structure. Arcturians, this is profound. What you feel repeatedly transforms into biology. Now I want to bring up a common mistake. Many people focus only on cholesterol, but cholesterol alone does not cause a heart attack. It is inflammation that makes the environment conducive for cholesterol to deposit in the arteries. Without inflammation, the process is much slower. So the question is not just, how is your cholesterol? The question is, how is your emotional life, your sleep, your stress level? If you ignore this, no supplement will save your heart. In the next chapter, we will talk about something even more practical: the foods that are deregulating your heart frequency daily, often without you noticing. And here you might be surprised. Foods that misalign your heart frequency. Arcturians. You can meditate every day. You can talk about galactic consciousness. You can activate light codes. But if your diet is inflammatory, your heart will pay the price. The body is biochemistry before it is discourse. And here is something alarming. A large part of cardiovascular diseases is directly linked to the modern diet. It's not an exaggeration, it's statistics. Let's talk about the main saboteurs. 1. Refined sugar, the inflammatory disguised as pleasure. Excessive sugar consumption rapidly raises blood glucose. This forces the pancreas to release insulin in large quantities. Over time, insulin resistance occurs. And what does this have to do with the heart? Insulin resistance is associated with systemic inflammation, increased triglycerides, reduction of HDL, protective cholesterol, higher risk of hypertension. Sugar doesn't attack the heart directly. It creates an inflammatory, metabolic environment, and inflammation is the fertile soil of cardiovascular disease. 2. Ultra-processed foods, the invisible overload. Industrialized foods are rich in trans fats, excess sodium preservatives, chemical additives. Excess sodium increases blood pressure. Trans fats increase oxidized LDL. Food additives can alter gut microbiota. And here enters something few connect. An imbalanced microbiota increases systemic inflammation, and systemic inflammation hits blood vessels. Your gut and your heart talk more than you imagine. 3. Excess alcohol. Small amounts can have a neutral or even protective effect in some contexts, but frequent and high consumption elevates blood pressure, increases triglycerides, deregulates heart rhythm, increases risk of atrial fibrillation, and many normalize this socially. But the heart doesn't understand, it's just social. It understands biochemistry. 4. Excess refined vegetable oils. Highly processed oils rich in omega-6, when consumed in excess and without balance with omega-3, favor inflammatory processes. It's not demonization, it's balance. The body needs proper proportion. Now breathe and reflect. How many of these foods are part of your weekly routine? Arcturians, it's not about living in extreme restriction, it's about coherence. Your body, as a multidimensional interface, needs adequate raw material to sustain your frequency. And here is an important point. Eating well is not about aesthetics. It's about preserving blood vessels that need to last decades. In the next chapter, I will list 5 common mistakes that are weakening the heart silently, even among people who believe they are healthy. And maybe you will identify with some. 5. Common mistakes that are weakening your heart. Arcturians. Many people believe they are taking care of their health because they don't smoke or do a checkup once a year. Why? But the heart is not protected by intention. It is protected by consistency. Here are 5 silent mistakes I see repeatedly, even in conscious people. 1. Trusting only basic exams. Doing a simple blood count and seeing that everything is normal does not mean your cardiovascular risk is 0. Many changes start years before appearing in conventional exams. Markers such as elevated triglycerides, HDL ratio, borderline glycemia, increased abdominal circumference already indicate metabolic risk, and many people ignore it because it's still within the limit. Arcturians, waiting to step out of the normal range to act is like waiting for the house to catch fire to buy an extinguisher. 2. Sleeping little and thinking you can make up for it on the weekend. Sleep deprivation increases cortisol, raises pressure, and reduces insulin sensitivity. Sleeping 5 hours a night for years is not productivity. It is physiological aggression. Deep sleep is when the body performs vascular repair. Without repair, wear and tear accumulate. 3. Believing exercise compensates for a bad diet. I work out so I can eat anything. No. Exercise reduces cardiovascular risk, yes, but it does not completely neutralize a constant inflammatory diet. It's like trying to dry the floor while the faucet stays open. 4. Living in constant stress and calling it ambition. High performance doesn't have to mean high inflammation. The problem is not having goals. It is never turning off. The nervous system needs to alternate between activation and recovery. Without recovery, the heart lives in electrical overload, and constant overload shortens longevity. 5. Ignoring mild signs because they seem normal. Mild tiredness, slightly elevated pressure, belly increasing little by little, fragmented sleep. These are not details. These are data. The body sends daily reports. You just need to learn to read them. Now I want to ask you something direct. Are you living preventively, or are you just hoping nothing happens? Arcturians with galactic consciousness also need biological discipline, because a mission without health becomes frustration. In the next chapter, I will deliver something practical, a clear, applicable, and scientifically coherent protocol to protect your heart starting today, without extremism, without empty mysticism, with strategy. Arcturian Heart Protection Protocol, step by step. Arcturians. Prevention is not theory, it is routine. You don't protect your heart with intention, you protect it with daily practice. Here is a structured protocol based on physiology, but aligned with frequency coherence. 1. Heart coherence breathing, 5 minutes per day. Slow, rhythmic breathing activates the vagus nerve, reduces cortisol, and improves heart rate variability. How to do it? Inhale for 5 seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. Maintain a constant rhythm. Do it for 5 minutes. This regulates the autonomic nervous system. Simple, free, scientifically validated. If you say you don't have 5 minutes, perhaps you are exactly the one who needs them. 2. Anti-inflammatory dietary adjustment. Start with 3 practical changes. Drastically reduce sugar and sodas. Increase consumption of vegetables, leaves, and fibers. Include sources of good fat, olive oil, avocado, nuts. These adjustments reduce inflammation and improve the lipid profile. It's not about a restrictive diet, it's about reducing daily aggressions. 3. Intelligent movement, not extreme. The heart needs regular stimulus. 150 weekly minutes of moderate activity already significantly reduces cardiovascular risk. Brisk walking, cycling, swimming. You don't need to become an athlete. You need to become consistent. And here is something important. Prolonged sedentary behavior is an independent risk factor, even in those who train 3 times a week. If you sit for 8 hours, get up every hour, your circulatory system will thank you. 4. Sleep as a biological priority. Establish a regular time to sleep. Avoid intense screens before lying down. Dark and quiet room. Sleep is not a luxury, it is vascular repair. Without deep sleep, the body does not reorganize inflammation. 5. Strategic emotional management. It's not about eliminating stress. It's about learning to discharge it. Physical exercise, breathing, writing, therapy, meditation. Storing tension is accumulating cortisol, and chronic cortisol is fuel for inflammation. Arcturians. Stellar intelligence does not mean ignoring emotion. It means knowing how to regulate it. Now notice something. None of these steps are extreme, but together, they completely change the metabolic scenario. You don't need to wait for a diagnosis. You can start today. In the next and final chapter, we are going to talk about something bigger than statistics, your mission, your family, and what it means to protect the heart consciously. The final call, protecting your heart, is protecting your mission, Arcturians. Let's be direct. Heart diseases don't just destroy an organ. They interrupt stories, they interrupt plans, they interrupt family presence. How many people do you know who seemed fine until something happened? The heart rarely collapses without warning. It collapses after years of silent neglect. And here is the most important point of this entire video. Your heart is not just a muscle. It is the center of your biological field. It sustains your daily energy. It allows you to be present for your family. Do you want longevity? Then you need coherence. Do you want to live longer? Then you need physiological discipline. Do you want to fulfill your mission? Then you need to protect the biological base that sustains your consciousness. Arcturians, there is no spirituality that compensates for chronic inflammation. There is no positive mindset that neutralizes years of metabolic neglect. There is choice, and daily choice. If you apply regulatory breathing, anti-inflammatory diet, consistent movement, strategic sleep, conscious emotional management, you drastically reduce your cardiovascular risk. It is not an absolute guarantee, but it is a significant reduction based on evidence, and that changes destinies. Conclusion. Today you learned that heart diseases start years before the acute event. Inflammation and cortisol are central factors. The heart is a regulatory electromagnetic field. Small signs should not be ignored. Prevention lies in daily choices. Now I want to ask you 2 final questions. Are you going to wait for a scare to change, or are you going to act while there is still time? Write in the comments, I choose prevention. This is not just engagement, it is a public commitment. If this video opened your consciousness, share it with someone you love. Often, saving a heart starts with sharing information. And if you want to deepen this path of preventive medicine, longevity, and frequency coherence, subscribe to the channel now. Because here, we unite science, responsibility, and elevated consciousness. Without fantasy, without exaggeration, with strategy. Your heart is beating right now. The question is, are you listening?